think when you apply Eckhart's principles to cultural issues today that are really facing us, I kind of summarize them with the 4 E's. First, ecology. So the whole issue of climate change and how we're treating the other species that are disappearing at untold rates. We're experiencing more extinction spasms today than any time in the last 60 million years on this planet. And do we have a spirituality to do with this or not? Well, with Eckhart you do, because his is so earth-based and creation-centered. And he sees every being as a cosmic Christ, as an expression of the divine nature. Again, this teaching is paralleled in Buddhism, the idea of the Buddha nature in every being. A second E is that of ecumenism, that is to say interfaith. That, as we already talked about, Eckhart is preeminently interfaith because he's gone so deep in his own journey as a Christian that he's come to the depths of the river where humanity dwells, where what Jung would call the archetypes are, that we share common experiences, whether we're Buddhist or Hindu, Christian, or even atheist. So he's a leader in terms of ecumenism. Then thirdly, the question of education. The Dalai Lama says education is in crisis the world over today, which I find somewhat comforting. It's not just a California problem or Oakland problem or an American problem. Our whole species is going through something, and the younger generation are looking for a more authentic learning experience, one that brings joy, the joy of learning, and depth, and values, and what I would call spirituality, a reason for living, and the energy for living. And to tell the truth, I don't think education is doing that today. I think academia is a big part of the problem. We're turning out all these professionals, but do they have their right brains alive as well as their left brains? No, they don't. Their mysticism gets killed, usually, by academia. And I have stories after stories about this. So education is kind of the funnel through which we pass so many professionals, and it needs serious reinvention. And of course, I've devoted over 30 years of my life to creating programs and pedagogy that allows this to happen. And it's a pedagogy that I think respects Eckhart's awareness that the human person is body, mind, soul, left brain, and right brain. Not that he would use that language, but we can use that language today. And the reptilian brain needs to be taken care of. That's what meditation does, so that the mammal brain, which is where compassion resides, can flourish. And we're not educating for that at all. In fact, to be honest, a lot of academia is pure reptilian brain. There are a lot of unhappy people, but powerful people in academia. So I think one question to ask about education is who accredits the accrediting agencies? And I've spent a lot of time sitting down with people in accrediting agencies, and I have to say, I found very few mystics there. Yeah. It's bean counters. And obviously accountants have their place in our world and in our institutions, but that's not where the values come from, as Einstein says. And I'm afraid that value caring pedagogies are not important to those who accredit our educational bodies, and therefore a lot of young people in school are bored. They're not being challenged ethically and creatively, and there's little room for creativity in a lot of our educational systems, and that's one way in which we have to revolutionize education, and Eckhart would help with that, because for Eckhart creativity is the heart. He says we all give birth to the Christ. We are all mothers of God. So he puts creativity right at the center of his theology. Now the fourth E, of course, is economics. And it's obvious from the crash of 6 years ago that, well, to be blunt, I don't think economists really know what's going on. the rape of Main Street by Wall Street that went on back then when we on Main Street bailed out Wall Street, what's changed? What's changed? Yes, we've made a few laws to try to control the greed there a little bit, but the truth is we need an economics that works for everybody in the world, and not just the two-legged ones, that works for the forests and the soil and the oceans and the fish and the polar bears. Are we capable of this? Of course we're capable of it. That's what's so amazing about our species, that we are intelligent and we are creative. And there are real thinkers such as David Corton, who have been working on this for years to develop an economics that works for everyone. But sad to say, they never are on the media. They're never being interviewed in Washington about how to create a system that works for everyone, instead of just putting Band-Aids on this Wall Street system that is still creating perverse human beings who are too laden with power and wealth on the one hand, and of course ignoring the unemployed on the other, and of course buying politicians who make the laws and so forth. And then the whole Citizens United decision by Supreme Court and all this. I mean, it could easily be the end of what's left of democracy if we cannot address the economic questions. And Eckhart was very, very strong in these topics. So much so that Ernst Bloch, the great Marxist philosopher, says that Marx learned a lot from Meister Eckhart. And of course, Eckhart is working from the prophets of Israel and Jesus about how important it is to put the human soul before the institutions and corporations. So there's a lot in Eckhart that stirs this up and that endorses not only the work of someone like David Corton, but the work of Anita Roddick, the work of Serge Latouche in France, contemporary, who's doing great work in what they call the ungrowth movement and so forth, raising the deeper questions about economics that I think the younger generation deserve to be debated and discussed. So I think these 4 E's kind of show how you can apply Eckhart's principles to areas that are truly primary at this time in terms of our survival as a species. Eckhart is speaking to our sustainability.